I'd like to call this board work session meeting of the Loveland Board of Education to order. If we see anyone straggling in, it's because the board meeting was announced to be downstairs in the conference room. We moved it up here. There is a note down there, but if you see someone coming in, they're probably not late. They probably went down there and then came up here. And so I would like to call the meeting to order at 6:02 and ask our treasurer for a roll call.
Mr. Daugherty?
Here.
Reverend Eilert?
Here.
Dr. Lorenz?
Here.
Dr. Schwetzner?
Here.
And Mrs. Washburn?
Here. Were you confused as to whether or not you were here?
I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't even remember if I said I'm here. Did I say I'm here? Okay. All right.
Check the minutes.
It's a Tuesday, right? Okay. So the first item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. You received this agenda and it has been posted on board docs. So is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I heard Mrs. Washburn and then Mr. Daugherty. Are there any questions? There are a small number of items on the agenda. If not, can we vote on that? Mr. Giuffre?
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
Mr. Daugherty?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner?
Yes.
Motion carried. And then we will start with the first reading of new course proposals. Before we get into that, let me just say that we are looking at these this evening, and I'm hoping that unless board members have other items that they wish to deal with on February 7th, we had scheduled several meetings to meet some levy deadlines if we needed them, and we do have a work session scheduled for next week, for February 7th. But we don't have any work that has to be done then that can't be put off until the February 21st regular board meeting. So I am just checking to make sure with Mr. Broadwater, with Dr. Orso, Dr. Puerta, Dr. Stacy, whatever whatever her title should be at this moment, whether we need to have these courses approved before the 21st of February, or if that meeting would do. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll hear these course proposals, take care of the meeting, and then we'll take care of canceling the February 7th meeting at a later time in this meeting. All right, so Mr. Broadwater?
It is that time of the year where we do new course proposals. So Dr. Puerta and Mr. David Knapp, our middle school principal, are going to present. Just as a reminder, although it is the end of January, beginning of February, that's when kids start to schedule. And so that's why we're starting to look at them. None of these new course proposals, we had let the board know, none of the new course proposals require any new additional staff. It's just in lieu of other coursework that now these seem to fit a little bit better for us. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Puerta.
And it looks like we don't have a microphone up there. Is that going to work for? We got one.
That works. All right. So we have 6 course proposals for you to review. 4 are at the middle school and 2 are at the high school. As Mr. Broadwater mentioned, none of them would require additional staff. It's just sort of rearranging some of the schedules that we already have in place. So Mr. Knapp is here tonight. I'm going to let him go ahead and talk about the 4 at the middle school, and then I'll jump in at the end and talk about the couple at the high school. So, Mr. Knapp.
Good evening, everybody. David Knapp, I'm the principal at Loveland Middle School.
Welcome, David.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. You know, as Mr. Broadwater just said, we come back from winter break and we hit the ground running with scheduling season. And as we have lots of different things that are kind of going on during this time, communicating with students, we start to talk to our 6th grade students and families at the middle school as we're bringing them up, transitioning to the middle school. We start with our 8th grade families as they transition up to the high school, and obviously that's a big jump for our students and all that's going on up at high school land. So lots of different stuff going on, and we're excited about these new courses that we're hoping to be offering at the middle school for next year. We have 4 of them, and I'm going to start by saying just thank you to our teachers. These are new courses, these are new things that we're going to be trying out. It always takes a creative mind to kind of put these things together for our teachers and taking on an additional prep and something new. So it's a new challenge for us and for our kids. So we're excited about that. The first one I'll talk about is our new Hope Squad elective. This time last year, you were hearing from Loveland High School in regards to their proposed elective for Hope Squad. As you all know, and as I'm sure some of our families know, our Hope Squad is a group of students that are trained in suicide prevention and mental health awareness, and they act as peers and students in our school to help educate our students and our faculty and address issues of mental health as they come up with our students, which we know is something that we work through every day in schools. What we have found, we've done a lot of research, and the middle school is typically offered. So we have Hope Squad members in 7th and 8th grade, and how we've met with those members in the past. Those students are all trained. They go through curriculum. It's called QPR, question, persuade, refer, and that's a protocol for listening and then listening to feedback and then directing people specifically as to how those concerns are coming up with how to seek help and support in those regards. That curriculum has been offered in the past, either before or after school. Our counselor, Ms. Schaefer, our school psychologist, Mrs. Taberti, have worked with students in that capacity, but the challenge has always been these students who are involved in Hope Squad are also those involved in other extracurriculars. So we're often competing for time in regards to practices outside of school or other clubs that are going on during Tiger Time in our school. So as we've done some research in regards to how best to do this, we've talked to some other schools, and the schools that have found the most success with this offer this as a specific elective during their course during the school day. So this course would be available for all of those students who are enrolled in the Hope Squad program, and they would be taking that as one of their bells during the school day, as opposed to doing it either before or after school, how we've done it in the past. We've been working with the high school. We're excited about the feedback that we've gotten from them. It sounds like things are going great with the class as an elective over at LHS, so we're excited to kind of align our approach with that at the middle school for next year. The second course that we're going to be proposing is our Tiger 101 course, and this is actually a class that was really inspired, as we were going through the strategic visioning process last year. I think we all got a lot of great feedback. One of the pieces of feedback that we at the middle school really took to heart was just the idea of transitions and how our students are transitioning both from LIS to LMS. And that's a big transition for kids. That is from really elementary world to secondary world. And even though it's just, one end of the building to the other, as far as how classes are set up, as far as students are transitioning, as far as the academic challenges, our students are going from seeing a few teachers during the day to now having a 7-bell schedule. They're going from a place where they're being led from class to class by their teacher to now being set free in the wilds of the middle school, going about the building. So we recognize that there are some logistical changes there also, but there are some executive functioning challenges as well. Our students are now going to be more autonomous. We're asking them to be more organized, to manage their schedule, to refer to teacher daily agendas. They have additional homework requirements that they're going to be going through. And we also have a lot of other great stuff that's going on that really kind of needs a place to live for our 7th grade students in regards to the great work that we're doing around college and career readiness. Some of the work we're trying to incorporate in regards to financial literacy pieces. How to incorporate our 21st century learning needs, as we've talked about things in our Loveland Tiger students, skills of those life and soft skills, communication, collaboration, all that good stuff. Those are going to be new demands that our kids are going to be facing in a different way up here. We want to provide those skills for our students in that transition environment. So this would be a class that is for incoming 7th graders that would really kind of be their onboarding to middle school. It's an intro to middle school class, if you will. One that we've modeled after some other schools that we've done some research with, and one that we hope to get many students into for that 7th grade year for them. So we're excited about that as well. Third class I want to talk about is it's a class that we're calling Puzzle Masters. And Puzzle Masters is going to be a 7th grade elective class. And ultimately, this would be a class that runs through our social studies department and would really be a course focusing on an opportunity to develop critical and creative thinking skills. We want to integrate those skills into all of our courses across our curriculum. This one would be one that's a little bit more so project and problem-based, and one that would be applicable to all curriculum areas. It would be very cross-curricular in nature, bringing in different classes and courses of study to really analyze and approach problems and problem solving and some different skill sets and how to approach problems in that way. Our teacher who is proposing this course, Mrs. Debbie Stewart, she is a gifted intervention specialist in a previous role, certificate that she holds. This is a a program and pathway that is near and dear to her heart, and we're really excited about that, as we know those problem-solving skills are so important for all of our students, regardless of kind of what their future holds. And our fourth course is going to be our medical detectives class, and this is a class that we are excited about. We currently offer two courses, two pathways through the Great Oaks program at the middle school. Great Oaks allows us to focus on STEM and IT classes here at the middle school, where we utilize Great Oaks instructors, but they are housed here in Loveland, and they teach Loveland students, only Loveland students. So for our current Great Oaks classes through our STEM pathway, we offer a Intro to Design and Modeling and a robotics class in 8th grade. The Intro to STEM is in 7th grade. And we've also onboarded a new IT pathway that we started 2 years ago. And in that 7th grade class, that's a Computer Science for Innovators and Makers class. That leads into a Computer Science Foundations class for 8th grade. That pathway feeds into our UC IT program that we have in place at the high school, and our Great Oaks courses have given us some great opportunities to reach those students. This medical detectives class is one that's offered through Great Oaks as well, and one that our current Great Oaks instructors would teach for us. This is a class that is more so focused on those health and human sciences pathways, which in working with Mr. Drews Mitchell, our college and career counselor, we know that that's an area that our students are really interested in. We have survey data, evidence for those things. So that was something we really wanted to kind of capitalize on. We did a little bit of research in regards to this class, and found it to be a great fit and one that we could easily fit into our schedule as well. So we're essentially opening up a really new academic pathway here at the middle school that would allow us to make some connections to those health and human science classes at the high school, as well as some of those career internships that you hear so much about. So we're excited about all of those. And like Mr. Broadwater said, all of these would be done utilizing existing staff, utilizing existing resources. We would simply be, as we would look at our course requests for our incoming 7th and 8th graders, we would look at where things are coming in, and these, may take the place of an existing elective for a student. A student may be taking one of these classes instead of like a study hall, for instance, as a 7th grader, but we can do all of this with existing staff and existing resources, so we're excited about all that. I know that was a lot, but this is exciting stuff for us.
I just
so-
have a quick kind of summarizing question. So they're all electives that students can choose. Do you foresee that there are any electives that might fall by the wayside? In other words, are these going to kind of have something else students not be able to take something that they have been taking?
It's a great question. I think that we'll probably see some smaller numbers in other areas. We've been growing our electives every year for the past few years. And what we've been able to do is really tap into different student interests and different teacher passions aligned to our curriculum. So, you always see an ebb and flow in terms of what kids are signing up for. But no, our numbers are pretty strong across the board in all the electives that we offer. I think it'll be interesting to see what the first year is for these and kind of where numbers come into play. Is it one section? Is it two sections? Is it 6 sections that we'll need? And we'll kind of balance things accordingly. But no, I don't imagine anything falling to the wayside, if you will, in regards to this, just based on the current numbers that we have around those electives.
Okay, thanks.
The Tiger 101, is that something you considered in looking at some of the other programs that would be a required course for all students?
Possibly, yep. So I think that would be, in terms of like the vision around it, I could definitely see that being something that would be required. With it being a first year, we want to see how it goes, see what works, what doesn't work, get feedback from students, feedback from instructors, feedback from our families, But I do think, though, Reverend Ireland, I think that's a great question, because I think that's kind of where we're thinking as well. With that, we just have to give it a little bit of time. We have it set up right now, so as we go into the curriculum planning for the course, kind of with an open end around it, if it's going to be a quarter class or a semester class, we'll need to see what the course requests are. We want to fit as many kids into that class as possible, given the nature of it. So with it being a first year, we'll kind of see where the numbers are, see how things work out, and make some refinements and go from there for the future.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks. So these will come in a resolution on the 21st, and we'll have the high school ones too, but they'll come in a resolution that then the board would adopt those courses. Okay.
Thank you. So we have two at the high school. Both of them are semester-long electives. The first one is Leadership Service Learning. Not sure that that was the name we're going to stick with. We're still kind of toying with the name of the course itself. It would be taught by Lynette Viox, and this course was designed and just sort of born out of the Business Advisory Council and some of the discussions that we've been having there. And when talking with some of our business leaders in our community, what they're saying that they need in the workforce are individuals who can communicate well, who have a lot of those soft skills that we're not necessarily able to teach. I know a lot of our teachers try to bring some of that into their classrooms, but this would be a course that is really directed towards those skills and may be very attractive for our students who are going straight into the workforce post-high school. It also comes with a 3-point credential, and so Lynette would go and get the training for the Leadership Excellence credential, and students in that course would earn 3 points of that credential. So it would just be going towards their credentialing, and we do have some students that could use that as an alternate path to graduation as well, if they earn 12 credits. So that's the first course, Leadership Service Learning. The second course is a peer tutoring center, and this is modeled after something that they do at Mason High School. And we had a couple of teachers go visit Mason and really took to the idea and wanted to come back and create something very similar in our high school, where students who are sort of our high flyers, who are maybe an NHS students or students looking for volunteer hours, who are very academically motivated, could spend 1, 2, 3 bells of a study hall each week going to the tutoring center, and students who have study hall who need help with their courses can go and they can partner up and get the help. And the tutors can either specialize, I just want to help with students in math class, or they may just say, I'm just willing to help any student who comes down, and then students during their study halls could come down and get peer tutoring help. It would be overseen by an adult, either para in the media center or a teacher if we have a bell where we're able to free a teacher up to do that sort of as like a duty bell kind of thing. So we want to start small next year and really roll it out with fidelity. And so it may just be something where we're getting students trained next year. We take in small numbers so that we're able to grow it over time. So, any questions with either
Any
of
questions?
those?
I don't know that they're questions, just a couple of very quick comments on, I love these both. I thank you for doing these. The peer tutoring one, a comment there is, I actually think this is a great way to get young people into the leadership mode. It brings me back to the program that we work with at Xavier University, XPath program, that's built on peer mentors in that particular case. And the growth that you see in the peer mentors is just phenomenal.
Yes.
I mean, they're going to turn out to be terrific leaders for tomorrow, added dimensions. And a comment on leadership service learning. You said even if kids go right into the workforce, I'm going to tell you that if they don't go right into the workforce and they go through college and beyond, this is still incredibly important in the workplace. Being able to work effectively with others is what modern business is built on. So thank you again for giving them more opportunities to hone those skill sets. I think these will be well served.
Absolutely, and that's what we've heard over and over in Business Advisory Council. That's what they're looking for.
If I could just interject one thing, I want to say thanks to Mr. Knapp. I don't know if the board's aware or not, but he was able to develop teaming at the middle school without any additional staff, which is very difficult to do. But the reason that's important is because it gives us a little bit more time during the day to find a kid's passion, right? To be able to offer these electives. So kudos to Mr. Knapp and his whole staff for doing that. And these courses are developed because staff have a passion, and kids have shown that they have a passion for it as well. And so I just want to say thanks to the staff for doing it. And I would agree with Mr. Doherty, the more leadership roles you're in, the more comfortable you start to be with who you are and how you are as a leader. And so the more we can do that for kids, the better. But thank you.
Thank you all. And as I said, these courses will come back on the 21st of February for board approval. All right. Mr. Broadwater, are you ready for us to move to the board resolutions?
I am ready. Yes.
All right. Let me just say, I didn't welcome our guests at the beginning of the meeting. And I'll welcome you now and let folks who are watching us online know that we are in the media center. We moved here because we were hearing that that's where folks thought we were going to be. We were going to be downstairs in the conference room, but we thought maybe we better be up here. So we're very glad to have an audience here in the meeting room, very glad to have the online audience that we will have watching. And this meeting will be recorded, as our meetings are, so that people may be watching it tomorrow. I don't know what that does to your time travel sense here, but they're not watching it tonight, they're watching it tomorrow. But there you go. So anyway, we're glad you're here. We're glad that people are paying attention. This is a work session meeting of the board, so we don't have a public participation session this evening, but most of you are aware that we have had a regular meeting where we had public participation concerning the board discussion about levies that will be happening before too long here. We've had two town hall meetings where we had very open conversations. People were able to give us lots of information, lots of opinions, lots of thoughts. I was just going to review for the board the communications that we've had since that last town hall. We have had, started out with about 7 or 8 folks who emailed us, and they were making sure that we knew that they did not wish us to put any kind of levy on the ballot in May. A variety of comments there. It was not ever going to pass a levy, to don't do it in May, to don't do a regular levy, do this or that kind of levy. So we had those. More recently, we've had 20 or 21. We just had another one come in before the meeting. Folks who are sending us messages that I'm going to say we really like to hear. I've been a bit back and forth about the messages we've been getting, but we've gotten about 20 or 21 folks who either simply are thanking the board for their part in what's happening in Loveland schools. And so we're very glad to hear that, what we've been doing has been good. We've also been hearing from those folks support of a possible levy. Again, differences in those communications that we've gotten. Some have specified the levy that they would be interested in. Some, the smaller end, we have 3 resolutions that are possible that we certified with the Hamilton County Auditor. So we had a couple of folks who said the smallest possible, a couple of folks who said the larger will make it last longer. So we're hoping to have conversation this evening, and I'm going to depend on my fellow board members to tell me how they want that conversation to go. We're not simply moving into a resolution to proceed. We're going to have conversation about how we're going to move into that. And I'll tell you how I kind of put those communications that we got together. And I was confused at first and thought, how do I deal with this? I have not answered any of those emails yet. I normally send responses to all the emails the board gets. And the first ones, I thought, well, I can't respond to those who are telling us not to pass a levy or to put a levy on the ballot till we decide what we're going to do. And then I felt like I couldn't respond to those who were thanking us simply by writing a thank you note for their thank you note, because, that's infinite. If I thank you for your thank you note, then do you have to thank me for thanking you for your thank you note? And we could go on forever. So I tried to put it together in my head with all of these various conversations that we're hearing. And it boils down to me to the fact that this board has been elected to serve the entire district. We weren't elected just by taxpayers. We weren't elected just by parents. We weren't elected just by folks who live here but maybe have never had children go to school here. We were elected by all of those people. And we have to take all of that information that comes in and figure out what is the best thing to do for the public education system here in Loveland, for the students, for the teachers, for the families that have come in the past, for the families that will come in the future. That's what we have to decide, in particular tonight. It doesn't always boil down to just one resolution like that, but that's what it's going to boil down to tonight. So hopefully that will start the conversation. I don't know if board members have statements that they want to make, or if they just want to start the conversation.
Before, the last town hall was between our last meeting and this meeting. So I wondered if you, Eric, and Mike, if any, had comments on the nature of the conversation at the last town halls. Not all of us, we were able to watch it online, but being in the room, comments you.
Takeaways for me, I thought it was a very good conversation. There were a couple gentlemen that discussed earned income tax, but presented it in a thoughtful manner, and we had quite a few supporters. I think even looking at some of the letters or emails I've received, you've got people that are kind of across the board. We presented 4.2, 4.9, and 6.5. I've got emails saying we need to go 6.5, and some, so it's all over the place in regards to opinions. But at the end of the day, I thought it was good conversation. I thought it certainly helped form more opinions for me. It didn't hurt anything. So
I think we had some additional student input. We had some, I think, in the first town hall, and I believe a survey was done of students, and I think we were presented with the information that most students are concerned about the financial situation of the district and really want to know not only how it's going to affect them, but how it's going to affect, we've had former students come and wonder how it's going to affect their younger brothers and sisters. So we got some more of that information at that town hall as well.
My understanding from listening to it remotely was that that was a student-sponsored survey,
Yes.
not a school-sponsored survey, for clarity.
correct, yes.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot more to add. I think it was done primarily in the interest of making sure that everybody in the community had a chance to offer their opinion and that everybody knew that they had the ability to be heard. Whatever the decision is, we certainly gained a lot of insight into where.
Okay. We all know that Mr. Doherty will
Has
sum
something
up
to say.
things well for us. And so,
I'm
I'm,
more than willing to wait, though.
Well, it lets us get a little bit lazy, doesn't it?
it does. But he does a great job of summing things up. So now's your chance to raise your hand and say you want to say something before Mr. Doherty, but you can also speak after he does.
Okay, so with your indulgence. Okay, so I've got an opening thing here. Before I comment on the property tax resolutions in front of us, I need to speak to the community on what I think of as a broader issue. Every action we take or word we speak or write is the result of personal choice. We all own what we do and can't blame someone else for it. Our words also have consequences. They can help or hurt our respective causes. I think we as a community are better than we have sometimes been, frankly. And as we close in on a levy decision tonight, I'll urge all of us to honor difference of opinion respectfully. Agree to disagree if you can't find common ground, but please just let it stop there. This community needs a lot less divisiveness and sometimes a lot more respect for each other. So please make a personal commitment to be part of a different tone going forward after tonight. Okay? All right, now to the issue at hand. We have a divided community with an almost even split between those supporting new school funding and those opposed to at least what we placed on the ballot last November. I think I've studied the facts carefully, listened to the many concerns expressed for and against a new levy. I agree with some points and disagree with others, but I have listened to everything sent my way. There's been extensive conversation on every point I've heard by now, and if you're interested, it's all a matter of public video record in our previous board meetings. My take, though, on it all is summarized in the following points. First of all, there's a couple of pluses. First, we have great schools, a top 12 out of 600 in the state, evidenced by the state report card ratings. Number two, our all-in expenditure per pupil is now lower than 56% of all districts in the state and 5.4% lower than the state average. That's well-controlled spending. Spending is not the problem we are dealing with. Then I'll move on to objections, and I think there are 6 objections that we have all been dealing with. One being declining enrollment has been cited as a reason for the schools not needing the money. The fact is that staffing has also declined, and in proportion to student counts, which is evidenced by us having one of the highest ratios of students to teachers since 2017. Number 2, why are we back with another levy when the voters have turned us down 3 times in a row now? The answer is simple. Saying no doesn't solve the underlying problem, and every levy request has been different than those that preceded it. The last one was barely defeated and suggests the community has begun to see the issue differently. This 4th one is driven by what I think of as pure accumulated need. Number 3, why don't we wait until November and give alternatives time to be discussed? Well, inflation, I went back and computed this one, inflation has shrunk the value of the dollar 25% since 2014, roughly a decade ago, when we last approved new monies for the schools. Ohio's unique school funding system, you know my opinion about this, drives the need for every district to continually ask the voters for new levies to address even the basic inflationary growth in their costs. Unfortunately, if you are tired, as all of us are, of new school tax requests every few years, you're going to have to move to another state. There is no relief from this process anywhere in Ohio. Property tax levies are for fixed amounts of money that are eaten up by cost inflation over time. We get to do this over and over and over again, the way this thing is structured. The current district forecast, the current district financial forecast, which is based on continuing to do only what we currently do with fixed staffing and programming levels, eliminating all new spending for high school busing restoration, new staff, or unforeseen expense allowances, but does include the new anticipated Sims TIF revenue, shows expenses exceeding revenue by $2 million this year, $3 million next year, and $5 million the following year. This means that without a levy approval this year, our year-end cash balance versus last year will shrink by about 35%. It will shrink by about 35% at 2024's fiscal year end. And if still no new levy is approved in 2024, next year, we'll be down by 68% at 2025's year end. Continuing that lack of new money results in exhausting our cash balance during 2026. So the bottom line is that we can't wait. We can't wait to solve the problem. I believe that by the end of 2024, our most urgent issue isn't the so-called fiscal distress situation that's being actively discussed out there, but a predecessor, intermittently running out of cash in certain months and inability to pay our bills. Make no doubt, state-defined fiscal distress eventually arrives, though, and it's simply not acceptable. Hate to do this to you, but just Google ORC 3316.17. That's Ohio Revised Code. That's the law. This is a really short, tiny little law that's nestled in a whole bunch of other related ones that says simply, a financial planning and supervision commission, that's the so-called state-appointed commission when you're at that level of fiscal distress, may remove the superintendent or the treasurer of a school district for failing to comply with the commission's orders concerning the preparation or implementation of the fiscal recovery plan. It does have that kind of power and more. That gives us all we need to know, though, to realize that we have to find a way through this. You can't save your way through the problem at this stage. without fundamentally changing the nature of the school experience in Loveland. You're starting to talk eventually about profound changes to what we do here. Number 4, leading the list of cost control suggestions from some in the community is to lower teacher cost. Loveland's teachers are well paid in comparison to other districts. 75% of the state's districts raised average teacher salaries last year. We actually showed a decline. We have approached the affordability of staff in a measured, responsible way and are seeing movement. Teachers are our employees and deserve our respect. They are also in the forefront of what we are here to do. In my opinion, addressing affordability needs to be a thoughtful, careful, and deliberate process, not a heavy-handed take-it-or-leave-it approach. That takes some time, but it's a much better way to make change. Number 5, some argue we should be voting on an income or earned income tax. Well, as you know, we had an exhaustive discussion on those options before we voted to consider the property levies in front of us tonight. Some pluses to the income tax approach, but also a bunch of significant issues. From the data I've studied, while it reduces taxes for some, there is a real risk that we raise taxes for the lowest earners in our community. Pushing the burden away from some and towards others adds to its divisiveness. It takes longer to get money to the schools at a time we're trying to fix a cash flow problem, and it is often initially defeated at the ballot before it is ever ultimately approved. So it's not a panacea. Number 6, others have argued we should have a fixed term versus permanent property levy. Again, we had a long discussion about this option last meeting. The fact is that this type of levy doesn't change the financial burden on our homeowners in the least and carries significant future risk of stability to a quality school system well into the future. Which brings us to the question. The issue comes down to asking the voters what they want from their schools. I think the schools are managing their cash quite well. So lowering costs to match revenue means significant cuts to what we do today. If, however, voters want less, they can vote against this levy in May to get to that result. If voters want more of exactly what is being delivered today, we should approve one of the property tax millage amounts that we're talking about tonight and send it to the ballot box. So again, we have 3. A 4.2 seems to me like we'll be just recovering from this levy process, and in the blink of an eye, we'll be back at the polls. 4.9 will sound like the same proposal as November to some, but it's not. It's a year later, and its impact is far less as we described last November. So there's no restoration of busing, additional headcount flexibility, or emergency reserves. Just a longer levy life versus the 4.2 for exactly what the schools are doing now. A 6.5 would get us a longer reprieve from the next levy round, but unfortunately, I think it would be more divisive and more difficult to sell in this environment. So I settle on thinking the 4.9 is the right move at this point, my opinion. I'll just close with this comment. The research I've done on our community's demographics, this has been very eye-opening for me, suggests to me that we have been changing for a good number of years. And there is clear, growing economic diversity across our households. And I can see where some people in the community say they just can't afford the levy. I get it. I really do. The board saying no to a levy, however, doesn't solve their problem, nor does it add to it in the short term, to be fair. But saying no does create a host of new problems that in the long term will likely damage almost everyone. I do think that we need new funding options that aren't in current state law to give us more flexibility to locally design a tax structure that more acceptably spreads the financial responsibility that I believe we all have to fund our public schools across our households. That is a subject for another day when we are not in the financial straits that we are in, but one I think it needs to be on the radar screen when we have some financial breathing room somewhere down the road.
Thanks. Thoughts, additional statements?
I think there's oftentimes a few things, as, you know, Kevin talks, that I think, well, I don't know if I would have said it exactly that way. I don't know if there was anything in what you just said
I know.
that I wouldn't completely agree with. I think that was a wonderful summary of where we are and why I think I have clarity in my mind as well about where I think we need to go in terms of putting a levy on the ballot in May for the exact reasons that you stated. I think as we, you know, look at all of those options, for me as well, that 4.9 levy is the one that makes the most sense in terms of what is passable, but also gets us, regionally, we started the discussion of looking at a potential May ballot initiative. Certainly the 4.2, to do something that reduced seemed like an attractive option to say we're being responsive to the concerns and trying to do the least, make something that has the least impact upon voters. But as we do the math, it just doesn't, I as well don't see the path forward for a 4.2 that doesn't turn around and have us right back at the ballot far too soon, especially given all that's gone into getting something passed at this point. So the 4.9 is what makes the most sense for me as well, as I think about the options that are before us tonight. And I know a lot of folks, and we're very grateful for all of the input from the community and the support that people gave. And a lot of folks said, I know you have very hard decisions, but for me, it was a very clear decision. I certainly don't like the idea of having to ask folks for more tax dollars. I think that is a divisive system that our state has put in place. And again, I completely agree that we need to continue to work to think about how do we change the system. We need to work on the commercial piece of the system as well, and we've had lots of discussions about that. So I think there's a lot of unanimity in this group about where we are and where we're going and what needs to happen. So it's there are certainly hard decisions and decisions we might not want to make, but there's certainly clarity in my mind about the decision we need to make tonight to support the schools and to continue the excellence in education we've had for many years in Lubbock.
Turn and look at me. I feel like I'm putting a spotlight. No, I mean, obviously, this has been on all of our minds, everybody in the community, as well as board members. And I agree with what Jonathan said, that you summed everything up perfectly, all the thoughts in my head. What I really wanted to touch on was what you talked about in the beginning about us wanting to have civil conversations and agree to disagree if you aren't on the same page. So I would just say that, yeah, we have been a community divided, but we don't need to remain that way. We're better than this. Our kids deserve better than this. Our staff deserves better than this. And our community deserves better. So the other thought that keeps running through my head is I hear over and over from people, but our taxes have increased so much. You guys just want more and more and more. You're lining your pockets, which, no. But the schools haven't received new money since 2014. The increase in taxes has come from the city, the county, it's from other places. The schools and the kids need funds, but they need additional funds. So where I am is the 4.2. I mean, I voted no to it last time because I didn't really think it was worth a discussion because it's not going to get us where we need to be. I would definitely like to have more discussion, though, between the 4.9 and 6.5 rather than just settling on the 4.9. I'm just thinking through all those thoughts, though, of what that discussion looks like.
Can I ask, I know that Mr. Broadwater presented to us the 4.2, the 4.9, and the 6.5. And so maybe a little clarity as to the difference. I mean, I think the 4.2, I think as Kevin said, someone said it's attractive in that it's different than the 4.9 in that it's showing some movement. But what it shows us is it's not going to get us where we need to go, either to last long enough even to not have to turn right around and start thinking about another property tax levy, or, as many people have asked us to do, to turn right around and start talking about the other kinds of taxes that we could consider instead of another property tax levy. So I don't think the 4.2 does that for us. Between the 4.9 and the 6.5, I would like perhaps Mr. Broadwater to go over, again, not all of his scenarios, we don't need the slides, but the notion of the 4.9 gives us a longer length of breathing room. I don't believe that the 6.5 got us any additional programs, but I want to be clear on that before we make that decision.
See, I was going to ask for those 2 slides.
Oh, well, then you can ask for the, I meant not all the slides.
Oh, okay, great.
So looking at the 4.9 and the 6.5, being the old math teacher, I think it makes common sense that the less millage, the less time you stretch it,
I know,
right?
I know.
And so 4.9 never gets us out of deficit spending. We're close the third year. And then you make the determination, how much do you want to dig into the cash balance, which right now just keeps going and down, down, down. The 4.9, I would say the 3 years, you're looking towards the end of the third year, you're going to need additional revenue, and that's not with adding anything. The 6.5, all the discussions I had for the November levy, my comment was 4.9 in May will not get you what 4.9 in November will get you, and here we sit. And what we said then also was the 4.9 in November would have to be about 6.5 in May to get close to the same thing. And so 6.5 would give us flexibility in regards to some decision-making. I think the board knows me well enough. I'm not into adding additional staff because that's how we can continue to stretch levies. But we look at what we heard tonight. How do you reallocate? Things are always going to change with kids. How do you do that? But Dr. Lorenz, the 4.9 would get us the 3 years. We will continue to work to cut costs as much as possible. The 6.5 would give us a little bit of flexibility administratively to make some decisions along with the board as far as what you might want to take a look at. I don't know if I answered your
Well,
question.
The one thing I think you told us at a certain point with the 6.5 was that that number was arrived at first, in the first look, to be a number that got us to a point where we were bringing in more revenue than we were expending at a certain point. That was the number that allowed us to get to that point.
Correct.
It wasn't a number that was proposed as a possible levy to certify, saying the 6.5 will get us this program and this additional number of teachers and this. So that's why what I meant by saying the 6.5 wasn't proposed to bring in an additional number of things, the way the 0.7 mils was for the 4.9
Correct.
in November. That was very specific additional
And the
things.
way we arrived, Mr. Giuffre and I, he puts it into the state software, the 4.9 was the minimum, the 6.5 would be the ideal to stretch it as long, 3 to 5 years. But again, I think it just makes common sense with less millage, you've got less years. The one, I don't know if the board saw, the one stat that kind of goes along with what Mr. Doherty was talking about. I hear people say we need to right-size the staff because enrollment is down, and I hear that quite a bit. And I just have to say, we are more than right-sized. And the statistic I will give you, I looked this up this week, and I had to look at it 5 times to make sure it was correct. We rank 594th out of 609 school districts when you look at student-to-teacher ratio. We are in the bottom 2% of all 609 districts when it comes to students per teacher ratio. I'm not sure Loveland knows that. I'm not sure our community wants that. But to have 98% of all the other school districts in the state of Ohio have a better student-to-teacher ratio, I think is indicative that we're probably pretty right-sized. The other thing I think that the community needs to realize is this board and this school district for years having grade-banded buildings. In other words, we just have one elementary, one primary, one middle school. That's how staffing can be controlled as well. And so the fact that we're grade banded allows us to be in the bottom 2% and still do very, very well. So we're not looking to climb to 80 to 70 to 60%. We're looking to maintain. We're set up to where we can do that. But I think it's important for the community to know we are right-sized. In fact, if I said we needed to get right-sized, I'd probably say we need to add people, not take them away. I'm not here to do that. We need additional funds to maintain what we're doing. But I also think that shows if that's 86% of our budget, that we're maintaining it pretty well. And so, long answer, the 4.9, two things. It's got to be passable, right? It has to be passable. And the other thing, we can extend it 3 years and start to talk about town halls where we discuss strategic visions and what's happening in the classrooms and all the great things that are going on.
Eileen, does that help with your question, the 4.9 and the 6.5? Or are there more questions that you have surrounding that?
No, it helps. I'm just looking at the graph again.
Yeah.
Okay. With the
Well,
Levy
I always like to wait to pitch in last because all of you do all the hard work and I can just say, yeah, you're right. That's great. I did joke a little bit about the laziness that Kevin brings to the rest of us because you were incredibly thorough in your research. You're incredibly thorough in your data collection. And honestly, it makes my life much easier. And I hope it makes our community realize how hard we work at this job. All of us have taken a tremendous amount of time to make sure that as best as we can, we understand what our community needs. We understand what our children need. We understand what our staff needs. And I come back over and over to several of the emails that we get saying, tighten your budget, spend less. Why don't you have fewer teachers? And I keep showing the data, and it just, people don't seem to care. Like, we've spent 25% less in real value dollars over the course of the past 10 years. We've gotten rid of 50 staff members. We're in the bottom 2% of the teacher-to-student ratio. Like, what else could you possibly want? Well, I think the administrators get too much of a cell phone budget. Well, we spend way less on administrators than all other school districts too. I think that number is also in like the bottom 25%.
For statewide, we're the bottom 25%.
So at some point, it just becomes, people are upset about the fact that they need to vote themselves to spend their own money to support their public schools. And I agree that that's a huge problem with the state of Ohio. It's a system that was found to be unconstitutional, yet still persists. Yet we're in this situation, and there's nothing else that we can do as a school board other than have an excellent superintendent and treasurer to continue to monitor the budget, to have HR on top of every single staff that we hire. We are running as efficiently as a school system can possibly run, and we're not asking for much more than that. So it makes no sense to me that this continues to be so divisive for our community. I mean, you hear the kids laughing outside now. I can't imagine closing the school buildings because we don't have the money to allow them to come and play basketball after school. And that's really the point that we're getting to. Very soon, we'll have to take incredibly aggressive steps in order to preserve cash because we're already spending less money or more money than we bring in each year.
And some people out there are saying that we're just fear mongering, but will be our reality.
And to go back to the concept of state takeover, you know, one of the auditor's representatives came in and said, you know, we won't take you over. But again, if you go back and read ORC 3316, I don't know how you define takeover. You know, we fired, we told the school board what they had to do, and we fired the superintendent and treasurer.
I think I said it while he was here, but this is akin to being in a company being in fiscal distress, going to its bankers for help, and then the bankers are going to be your friends. The bankers are going to make sure you know what their expectations are, and because you need them, you're going to do it.
And I think just to kind of summarize my thoughts on the 4.2, 4.9, and 6.5 choices in front of us, I can tell you, I very clearly, strongly favor 6.5. I think that gives us a much longer roadway and pathway to continue to do what we do and push the next ask for a levy down the road. On the other hand, I have grave concerns that a 6.5 would be looked at as we are tone deaf and we're not hearing our community. I think that a 4.2 is too little. I think that we will be right back in this conversation much sooner than any of us want to be back. And I think that 4.9 strikes that balance. The thing that's frustrating to me is the idea that somebody could say, well, you just asked us for that and we said no. Well, that actually you did, and a whole year went by until the school had more money. And that's $5 million more in the hole than we were before. This isn't the same thing that we asked for before. We still need money to operate the schools, and it still has to be locally funded.
I think the only thing I'd have to add on the 6.5, because I think we have had some folks say to us, we want the best. We want to go back to some of the things we had before. We've lost a gifted teacher. There are student populations that we are not serving as well as we were before. We've lost some of the elementary music program, the room that we had there, and some people might say, well, music that's a perk, that's an extra, you don't need to have music. And no, maybe you don't need to have music in your life, but I personally think that music is a part of a well-rounded life and a part of a well-rounded education, and it provides benefits that have been scientifically proven. So, saying, well, we don't need to worry about music is not a fair assessment either. But to say, well, let's try for a 6.5 so we can add back in what we want to do, I think is not responsible in this time of our tax situation. That's what I'd very much like to do. I agree with you. I'd very much like to say, we need this much money. That's the effort that was made for, as I mentioned at the town hall, for about a year, where a bunch of people sat around, a bunch of experts, and then a few non-experts like me included, said what constitutes an education for a student in Loveland? And how much does physical education cost, and how much does music cost, and how much does remedial reading cost, and all of these things, and came up with a number of what it would cost to educate a student. The problem with that, of course, is that it has to be funded at the state level to make that true for students all across the state, and that got thrown away when the administration changed in the state. So we're left with this situation. We have local control, but that means we have local issues with how we're going to fund it. Nothing has been mentioned this evening about, we still have the same tax situation in Loveland, which is primarily homeowners are paying the property taxes. And we keep struggling. We did manage to get to the point where we've got some money coming back from some tax abatement, but we keep struggling with, yes, we could do more to try and get more business in here, but it would probably come at the cost of an abatement to start with, and so it's a lot of work for something that doesn't bring us a lot of money. And we've also had a lot of people say they don't want the nature of Loveland to change that much. They don't want Loveland to become an industrial town. They want Loveland to be what Loveland is. And I think that's simply what we're trying to say, is we would like Loveland education to be what Loveland education is. More conversation?
I think just back to the 6.5 too. I think, again, many of us would like to see the 6.5 if we could, because we see how helpful that would be to the overall issues that we face. A lot of us would love to see those services come back that you referred to. Again, it comes back to, at the end of the day, for where we are right now, is we have to do something that's passable because of the seriousness of the situation if something is not passed. So I think that becomes part of that future discussion. How do we look towards future services and look at tax structures long-term? But for now, this is an immediate issue in order to maintain the district as it currently stands. And I think we have to go with all seriousness into this next election to make sure that when we come to May, that we have something that we know, that we think is passing.
I want to believe that, we've had enough time to heal since 19 and 20, but remarkably, we are not healed. And I said it a minute ago, I agree with the 6.5 comments, or I do. I think that would be a breath of fresh air. Everybody could settle down for quite a long time. Parents coming to the district could be assured that there'll be a stable, reliable educational experience here for their kids for a good number of years down the road. But I just am deeply concerned that we won't get agreement on it with the voters. It'll be inflammatory. Not only did we tell you no to 4.9, but then you come back with a 6.5. I can just hear it all. And I wish that weren't the case, because in almost every sense I can think of, a 6.5 actually makes more sense. Right? But I just don't believe that we could get that through at this point in time.
One thing that I heard in the couple of town halls, I think, or in some of the information that we've gotten that I haven't heard in quite a few years, is more than one person saying, we need to look at an earned income tax. And we've actually had some people say, we'll help you pass an earned income tax. And that is somewhat new and may be related to the change in what's happened to property values in Loveland, what's happened to the makeup of the citizens of Loveland, the taxpayers of Loveland. And so I think it's very worthwhile. I know we're kind of tired, but it's very worthwhile to say, this is what we need, but we also need to very quickly continue more conversations and more work on different, as you suggest, different kinds of taxing
Yeah, I think,
strategies.
I've been thinking about it obviously a lot, and sometimes we want to say Loveland is not so unique, but I think there are nuances about Loveland's demographics relative to other, from a state's definition, wealthy communities that do in fact make us different. And as much as I half jokingly am upset with our friends in Columbus about what they've left us with here, I think 50 years ago, when this thing was constructed, they didn't necessarily anticipate all these nuances. And that, to me, is the kind of tact in the coming months and years. If we could get finances stabilized here for a few years, get things settled down for a few years, taking a fresh look at what we could do to work with the legislature. I'm not talking about turning school funding upside down, because I'm deeply concerned that, we're going to come out on the short end of that one. But I do think that maybe we could engage on giving us more flexibility to manage our own taxes locally that fits the uniquenesses of this community a little bit better. And maybe we can come up with a better answer. I don't know. But, if we were able to pass in May, I would be urging us to form some kind of a commission to revisit the subject with a different mandate and try to keep this alive, hopefully to a different solution at some point down the road before we need to go back with another levy. But now's not the time to do it. Now we're trying to keep our proverbial heads above water, and we have to get this problem squared away so we could turn our attentions to something like that somewhere down the road.
Anything else? Or is it time for someone to authorize or to make a motion? You do have a resolution, a possible resolution on the agenda. It has some blanks in it. It has a blank for the mills, And therefore, and the three choices that we have this evening are the three choices that were certified. So, is there such a resolution?
So I would make the motion to place a 4.9 mil levy on May 2nd, 2022 ballot.
And I would second that.
Who wants the, Dr. Swetchnow seconded. I think I heard Mr. Doherty as well. Okay, and we obviously can still have further discussion. It is a motion to place a 4.9 mil levy on the May 2nd, 2023 ballot. And the full resolution language is under the attachment, under that resolution. Questions, additional discussion? Not seeing any, then are we ready to vote? Mr. Giuffre?
Reverend Eilert.
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. The only other business to come before this board, Mr. Giuffre, do we need a resolution to cancel the February 7th meeting, or simply an announcement that there will not be a meeting on February 7th?
An announcement would be adequate.
And so everyone's clear at the table that we will not meet next Tuesday? And then our next meeting would be February 21st, which is a regular board business meeting. There will be public participation at that meeting, and there will at least be some course proposals to approve, but obviously other business as well. Okay, anything else to come before this board? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow moved and Mrs. Washburn seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 7:08.